Hello, and welcome to the State of 911 webinar series hosted by the NHTSA National 911 program. My name is Brian, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. Next slide. This webinar series is designed to provide useful information for the 911 stakeholder community about federal, state, and local participation in the planning, design, and advancement of 911. It includes real experiences from leaders utilizing processes throughout the country to improve and enhance 911. In today's session, we will provide a review of the NHTSA National 911 Program's GIS project, including federal initiatives supporting GIS in 911, along with a case study of the state of Arizona, which built a successful bridge between 911 and GIS to the advantage of all 911 authorities across the state. Additionally, we will discuss 911's role in traffic incident management, a proven system of managing incidents with the goal of reducing responders' exposure to live traffic and quickly and safely clearing crashes from the road. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on 911.gov. For more information on the National 911 Program webinars, access to archived recordings, or to learn more about the National 911 Program, please visit 911.gov. For closed captioning during today's webinar, hover over the bottom of the Zoom screen for meetings controls, and then click the CC button to start viewing the captioning. Feedback or questions about the webinars can be sent to nhtsa.national911@dot.gov. The National 911 Program would like to make you aware that the Document and Tools section of the 911.gov website has been updated with new resources and improved access. 911 stakeholders are encouraged to submit links and documents that would be of use and interest to your 911 colleagues, including policy documents, plans, reports across several topics, such as governance, management, operations, post-crash care, standards and best practices, and technical documents are available. You may access the web page under the resources drop-down menu or scan the QR code in the bottom right corner of this slide. Content can be submitted by clicking the online submission form on the top right side of the Docs and Tools page. Next slide. The National 911 Program would also like to invite you to visit the 911 Telecommunicator Tree of Life and share the name of a remarkable 911 telecommunicator who has inspired you. Share your story at 911treeoflife.org to honor a special 911 telecommunicator who is making a difference in your community. Next slide. Please note that all participant phone lines have been put in a listen-only mode, and this webinar is being recorded. To ask questions of our presenters, feel free to take one of two actions. Use Zoom's QA feature located on the bottom of your screen in the meeting controls. You can enter your question at any time during the presentation, and it'll be entered into a queue. Hover your mouse over the bottom of the page to access these meeting controls. Or to ask your question live, use the raise hand feature to request your phone line to be unmuted, and you will be called upon to ask your questions. Individuals registered for this webinar will receive access to today's PowerPoint presentation and a webinar recording. With that, I would like to introduce our first topic and speakers. First, I am going to introduce Robert Horne. Robert is the GIS 911 manager with Mission Critical Partners and has supported the National 911 Program in a variety of GIS initiatives and papers. Robert?
Thanks, Brian. Hello, everyone. Robert Horne. I had the privilege of introducing two longtime friends and co-conspirators in the GIS realm. Eric Shreve, he's the 911 Geospatial Manager with the state of Arizona, works within the Arizona Strategic Enterprise Technology Office, ASET, with ADOA. And Jenna Levielle, Arizona Deputy State Cartographer, and they're going to talk to you today about enhancing NextGen through collaboration.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having us today. You can move to the next slide. So we're going to give a brief overview of some of the things that we're doing in the state of Arizona as it relates to NG911 and GIS integration. Definitely will not say this happens overnight. It's a all hands on deck, as well as leveraging partnerships, both in the private vendor side as well as state and local level participants. So just a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today over the next 20 minutes. and hopefully just give you some insights and some takeaway call to actions that can be leveraged by this discussion. Next slide. So again, why we are here today is having an understanding of what next generation 911 looks like as it relates to GIS. We, often like to use this visual as a very simplified approach in relation to how the sausage is made in the workflow in integrating GIS information. So I like to think top right as the workflow of integrating your address points, road center lines, and then the various boundaries. From there, integrating the spatial interface, which coordinates both the location validation function and then the emergency call routing function. Once that information is coordinated and coalesced, then we can come into reality of integrating the originating service providers in relation to wireless, wireline, VoIP, text to 911, all the various methods for originating 911 calls. From there, that's where we tie in geospatial data to make the routability for a next generation a true component of what we do for the state of Arizona. So again, I like to think of address points and road center lines as the mechanism to validate against wireline records. You can think of those as your, grandma, grandpa phone line that they have in their house, using address points and road center lines to validate off that information. And then the other leg of the validation is the emergency call routing function, which the core would be the PSAP polygon for determining where to route a call, both wireless, wireline, VoIP, as well as any other method that comes in with that routing process. And then in addition to supporting some of the legacy 911 networks, legacy selected routers are a big one that come to mind, ensuring all that has a coordinated effort and can coordinate through the ESENet and route the call to the correct location. And just a little background information about the Arizona 911 project. We've been at this endeavor for about 2.5 years now. It definitely has had its successes as well as challenge pain points. But overall, I would say it's been a very impactful project, given that we've been able to coordinate with entities ranging from locals, tribes, federal, DoD installations, just kind of a large gambit of stakeholders that we coordinate with to make this all a reality. And then, like I said in the previous slide, leveraging and building those partnerships and relationships with entities that are already using the data in a data supply chain fashion, leveraging those partnerships as well as partnerships with our private vendors, our private sector vendors, in ensuring that we have the best practice, best standards as far as implementing the NG911 GIS workflow for the state of Arizona. Next slide. So just brief background about me. So I work for the Arizona State 911 program, like Robert alluded to. We have a growing team, and we look to really push the next generation 911 concept in addition to other concepts such as trainings, standards, and then just kind of the overall effort of public safety awareness as it relates to IT. And I'll kick it over to Jenna.
Thanks, Eric. Good. I guess it's good afternoon, everyone. In Arizona, it's still good morning. This is one of my favorite topics. In Arizona, we are very much grassroots for collaboration with Geospatial. As Eric said, the heavy lift of implementing NG911 has really been the last 2.5 or 3 years. But I think it's really important to understand the landscape that set that up for success. So I work for the Arizona State Land Department, and statutorily, we are required to coordinate geospatial data for the state. Anything that is statewide, it's my responsibility to make sure that attention is paid. So 911 falls under that. Part of the mechanism for that is the Arizona Geographic Information Council. And again, that's a governor-appointed board that sits, it sits under state land in statute. It's really meant as an advisory board. It's quite large. There are 35 representatives from all different jurisdictions that help guide our activities. In regards to Next Gen 911, the discussion really started probably more than 10 years ago. Under the council, under AGIC, we have committees and work groups, and a Next Gen 911 committee was stood up pretty quickly after the concept of geospatial call routing was introduced. So where that gave us benefit and where that gave us a really strong foundation to end up where we're at now with implementation is that we engage the stakeholders from the local level, state, all the different stakeholders in the same room and gave them a voice. There's a huge power to training as well as troubleshooting and a shared vision of collaboration. It's really made Arizona very successful in our efforts for implementing NG911 and was a great foundation, is a great foundation. It's evolved over the years, but it's really led to the current implementation and success. Next slide. So under AGIC, as well as land, one of our statutory obligations is a statewide clearinghouse, geospatial clearinghouse. So in 2020, we reimagined and modernized our clearinghouse that had existed for about 7 or 8 years previously, but the technology really hadn't withstood the time. So we modernized it. It's based on Esri technology. What it allows is for us to have a public-facing front end to deliver data seamlessly in kind of a self-service environment. But then we have a secure back end so that we can collaborate with our partners, and it's easy to contribute to a statewide data set like what's required for the data supply chain that Eric mentioned previously. So there are secure groups, there are GIS functionality that is out of the box. What that does is allow our partners to not have additional steps to share their data, validate their data, and get it to the state so that we can really have high performance in our next gen environment. So Eric, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, and just to kind of add a little more to the discussion, the other thing that we've really been able to leverage through this AZGeo collaboration is building out information websites through ArcGIS Hubs. If you're not familiar with that, it's a very intuitive solution to build out engagement, provide information without having to code, without having to stand up an individual website. I highly recommend it, and that's just something that we really been able to leverage on the AZGeo platform to create that engagement and stakeholder relationship. So next slide. So as we mentioned in the previous 2 slides, the concept of the data supply chain is our bread and butter to success. We really like to leverage the concept of build once, use many times. I can't say it enough in government, especially at the state level. We often have duplications of effort that creates a strain on both the locals as well as state level entities, because you're having to curate and manage multiple data sets that may not serve the best purpose as an authoritative statewide data set that can be leveraged for things such as geospatial call routing. So the workflow that we have based on this graphic on the right is the core data sets for next generation 911 are required data sets: address points, road center lines, and then the 4 boundaries that are in relation to the emergency service boundaries. Through our partnership, like I talked about earlier with One Spatial, we have a workflow in place where we can authenticate a data validation and aggregation solution through a software as a service type approach, where we can deploy a hub where entities can go in and validate their information at their leisure and running it against the NENA GIS data model standards. We create a standardized approach for validating information. And then in addition to that, making sure that any information that doesn't meet that level of conformance, we can pause and make sure that the data provider can take that change, take that recommendation for corrections and apply it, and then update their GIS data set. And then from there, it's a repetitive approach of getting the GIS data validated and then aggregated to our statewide repository, which would be AZGeo. And then in addition to that, where we would leverage the geospatial supply chain concept is our partnership with our state DOT. They have a requirement for their federal programmatic reporting through the linear referencing system. They take road centerline data that get curated and aggregated through the 911 workflow, and then that supports the need that they have for a requirement. So again, really leverages that partnership with our other stakeholders that we have here in the state of Arizona. And then in addition to that, our other partnership that we leverage with the One Spatial data supply chain workflow is our partnership with our next generation core service provider, Comtech, and then their sublocation vendor, DTI. We have another mechanism to validate the information. Essentially, you can think of it as a secondary means of checks and balances of ensuring that the GIS data conforms, and that's ultimately what is used to validate the data in the LVF as well as ECRF. And then lastly, the other workflow that we've been able to leverage on this is supporting the national address database. So through that address point aggregation that is noted in the top left of the workflow, that data then gets rolled up for a statewide address point data set that gets supported to the national initiative of nationwide address point data set. So it's really a cohesive effort in ensuring that we have a standardized approach, ensuring that there's communication and transparency as far as how to use the tools, how to evaluate and look at the QC reports, and then apply those corrections to have the information roll up to have data that's usable for public safety grade GIS information. Next slide. So again, having a standardized approach, can't say it enough. That's the name of the game. That's something that NENA really presses on stakeholders, of having a standardized approach to validate and aggregate data. I would say the other advantage that we have in this workflow is a transactional based approach. So through our process with our vendors, running a change detection process simplifies our approach, as opposed to our office having to coordinate with all the stakeholders and receive that raw information and then go and stitch it and apply it to a statewide data set. We have the mechanisms in place to automate it as much as possible. And then lastly, just, again, our partnership with AZGeo, State Land, and AGIC is, can't say it enough, is rather than I myself or our office having to stand up our own ArcGIS infrastructure for ArcGIS Enterprise, we can leverage the partnerships that we already have in place. And I'll kick it over to Jenna if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, happy to. So it's one of the powers of AZGeo and AGIC is that we can have cost savings across agencies. Arizona doesn't have a traditional centralized GIS. We're a little more ad hoc and voluntary. But because of that, we really have a lot of collaboration and a lot of support. So AGIC and AZ Land supplies AZGeo and access to AZGeo, which is connected to an enterprise environment. What that does is we invest in that and then reach out to our partners to help support that investment. Overall, it's a shared savings for everyone. So Eric doesn't have the challenge of also managing his infrastructure. We do that for him, and then he accesses it and shares those benefits with local stakeholders. What we've found, we use it for a variety of things, even outside of 911, but what we've found is that it's really a productive way to invest smartly. Had Eric had to stand up his own GIS infrastructure, it would have been an additional cost of hundreds of thousands. This way, it's a small percentage of that, and the way we see it, it's win-win for everyone. I think it helps us to make the data sets once and use them many times, as Eric mentioned. So there is added return on investment from that perspective. We can use the address points for other geospatial decisions in other areas, health and human safety, ADOT, and transportation. We can use it for a lot of different things. So it's really a huge advantage to share the infrastructure. Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Jenna. And just to kind of summarize this talking point, I can't say it enough, just having to not have to dabble in the ArcGIS server management side of things and making sure software is to the latest and greatest. It frees up our office to focus on other initiatives and not have to focus on the server infrastructure, which I can't say enough is something that definitely makes our program more successful in that matter. So next slide. So just kind of, some of the takeaways that we've seen in the state of Arizona in reference of AZGeo on how it can be a model that can be leveraged by other stakeholders. Interstate is something that comes to mind, as well as, going down to the local level. I think it can't be said enough, is just establishing those relationships is the name of the game. Knowing what is currently existing in your state or at a local level is something that really places an emphasis that I can't say enough. And I would say having the infrastructure that is, authoritative in that matter, that we have a governing body that supports the interest of what the AZGeo build out is. I think that alleviates a lot of burdens when we're talking about data sharing and what that process looks like as far as that information getting out. I think having the framework and the bones behind having that portal and having that instance of architecture in place really makes just an effective approach for getting buy-in from other stakeholders that are supporting this endeavor or may not be supporting this endeavor. We've had a lot of engagement recently with a couple of tribal communities in the state of Arizona that want to research and examine this a little further and seeing what that looks like as far as a partnership and building the rollout and partnering on getting GIS data aggregated for their NG use case for their tribal entities. And then just, expanding upon I think it's a model that I could see other states adopt. I think, when we talk about state spatial data infrastructure, the SDI, I think that's a growing trend that continues to build across the country. And as that information gets rolled up at a national level, as far as those framework themed data sets, showing that the use case exists and how states such as us in Arizona have built that out. Just can't say enough of the success on that. Next slide. And so just final thoughts, call to actions, wrapping everything up. Like we said, our next generation 911 effort through the state 911 office would not be successful without the partnership with AZGeo, Arizona State Land Department, AGIC. It just builds out the collaboration as well as that authoritative framework for creating engagement, creating buy-in. Just can't say it enough. And then, like I talked about, build out and rollouts of the spatial data infrastructure. That's a growing trend that we continue to see, in addition to the national spatial data infrastructure, so the NSDI. So leveraging, state nationwide data sets such as the national address database and building out and just creating that engagement on what that looks like. Continued commitment to innovation. So what we're looking at doing, building out the AZGeo infrastructure more is showing the capacity of parcel aggregation as well as indoor mapping. That's something we're really pushing a focus on as we move forward, of building that statewide rollout. And then lastly, just continuing on the element of next generation 911 of having a interoperable data set that stretches past your jurisdiction, having the capability of having that network of network concepts, really pushing on the GIS data as that framework data or that framework information to support the overall process on call routing. And I think that is it.
Okay, well, thank you all. Robert, Eric, and Jenna, that was great. We do have some questions for you. I think I'm going to start with the first question, which you may have answered, but let's make sure we did, which is Sam Young asked what data is hosted on AZGeo.
I can take that. We have quite a wide variety. So what we hope for is all authoritative data, and that's what we support. So it's not just 911 data, it is boundaries. You can think of the foundational data sets. So the data sets that everybody needs to be able to make decisions. It is a self-serve portal that is overseen. We have a data curator that helps us to make sure it's not the Wild West. So what the public can access are authoritative data sets that help inform decision making, like boundaries, addresses, road center lines, environmental data, natural resource, like where management is happening on the ground. So there's quite a wide variety of data sets that are available through AZGeo.
Great. Next question I have is from Dan Miller, and I know it's one that comes up often around the country with GIS. Do you have issues with agencies or counties not wanting to share data, or how have you overcome that?
So I would say on the 911 side, for those required data sets, we don't get much pushback at all in regards to those data sets being shared for what we need. When we're talking about a statewide data set being utilized for a call routing purpose, we don't get a lot of pushback. I would say a big data set that we have that has some contention is parcel cadastral information. We have had some pushback for counties, and that's more on counties that still have a requirement to where they need to have a form of monetize off the data. I will say that, and I think it's a theme across the country as states coordinate with counties and locals. But we're working on some mechanisms through our office, as well as partnering with AZGeo and AGIC to alleviate and build a better mechanism for that.
Yeah,
Great, we gotta go. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
I would just quickly add that one of the things that we spend a lot of time on is understanding what the barriers are and building solutions collaboratively. So we leverage AGIC and our committees and work groups to learn more about what is stopping folks from sharing and how can we overcome that. So we've had a lot of success through those discussions.
Great. Next question from David Harden. What happens to the local data or the call process after being routed to the Geocom and then the computer-aided dispatch?
Yes, I think I can answer this question. So when the data is aggregated at the state level through the data supply chain workflow, the data then is provided to our partners over at Digital Data Technology, who manages the spatial interface, which combines both the emergency call routing function and the location validation function. They validate it in their system to ensure that all wireline records do in fact have the ability to validate, and then looking at those other spatial data checks from there. So from a routing perspective, when the call originates in wireless wireline, from there the ingress goes into the Comtech selective router. From there then is a mechanism in place to validate that information. From the Geocom side, so our partnership with AT&T as call handling as a service, they utilize VestaMap Local or Vesta as the call handling equipment. That's the partnership. And so Geocom generates the mobile map package, which then gets provisioned over into the VestaMap Local process for the 911 call handling map. And then CAD, from there is a translation method. So when the 911 call originates and the call gets directed to the correct PSAP, there is a mechanism in place that will do that parsing of the information to ensure that it can format into CAD. CAD's a little bit of a difficult one to address, just because there's not a standardized approach like you see when we're talking about next gen. I know APCO is working on that. There's a couple of work groups that are looking to standardize that process. So we don't have necessarily a lot of oversight on the CAD side. I would say that's more of a local home rule aspect, but that's something that we're definitely playing a bigger role in as far as a statewide initiative.
All right, great. That's all the time we have for questions. The remaining questions we will get our panelists to answer and provide those answers when we post this information on 911.gov. So Eric and Jenna, thank you so much for your time. And we are going to move on to our next speaker. Oh, and we just put it in the chat, but for more information on next generation 911 and GIS, check out the GIS assessment page on 911.gov, and you can have access to a lot of reports that have been posted, including some that were just put up, three white papers that were just placed there 2 weeks ago. So with that, I now have the honor and pleasure to introduce Jennifer Kirkland from the Colorado State 911 program, where she is the program manager. Jennifer has worked on 911's role in traffic safety in a variety of different initiatives in Colorado, and she's here today to talk about TIM, Traffic Incident Management. Jennifer.
Thanks, Brian, and good morning, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and talk with you about traffic incident management, the traffic incident management system with everybody. For some of you, this might be a review, and for some of you, this might be the first time you've ever heard of that. So we'll just dive right in, and if we could go to the next slide, please. So my name is Jennifer Kirkland, and I've got 22 years in 911. I started at Vail Public Safety Communications Center in Vail, Colorado, which is on I-70, obviously one of the biggest interstates in the country, and kind of a throughway for everything, both for Colorado and the country as far as truck traffic and shipping goes. They moved down to Grand Junction Regional Communications Center in the last 4 years, and I'm now the State 911 Program Manager. I'm also a NENA Education Advisory Board member and instructor, and a senior consultant with Fitch & Associates, facilitating the CCM program. I've been a volunteer firefighter and EMT, so I have experience both under the headset and on the road, but that is not necessary for successful traffic incident management. I just throw that in there to help you understand kind of my background. And in 2017, our governor stood up at the time they called it a task force on first responder safety in response to, unfortunately, several first responder deaths that we had. So the governor started what is now the Colorado Standing Committee on First Responder Safety in 2017. And I was appointed to be the 911 representative on that committee, which is what got me into traffic incident management in the first place. So next slide, please. So traffic incident management, it's kind of similar to ICS. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with ICS, but this is a traffic incident management system. It's planned and coordinated multidisciplinary process. It's designed to detect, respond to, and clear traffic incidents so that traffic flow can be restored as safely and quickly as possible. So I'm sure everywhere you are in the country, you deal with traffic incidents at some level, whether you've got major interstates through your jurisdiction or you have smaller roads that still have crashes that affect your county or your community. Traffic incident management affects all of us. So when you have effective traffic incident management, it reduces the duration and the impact of traffic incidents. It improves the safety of motorists, crash victims, and emergency responders, and reduces the frequency of secondary crashes. So not only do we have to worry about the motoring public out on our roads, but we also have to worry about our responders when they're out there on the highways or on the roads, responding to those crashes and those incidents, and making sure that they make it home safely and they are not involved in what's called a secondary crash. So I highlighted some words in this definition because I kind of wanted to tie these words back to what we do in the 911 center or in the PSAP. Detecting those crashes is the first part of what we do. Improving the safety of motorists, crash victims, and especially emergency responders. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, I'm in the PSAP and I don't play in traffic. So let's go to the next slide. What does this have to do with me as a 911 professional? Actually, the National Roadway Safety Strategies starts, everything that TIM is, starts in the comm center. So early detection of a crash, well, that usually happens through a 911 call or possibly camera monitoring that you might have in your PSAP, or telematics. You might get that call through telematics, through OnStar, or other telematic notifications, Apple crash notifications. Caring for the public does start before a crash as well, in terms of notification of other incidents that may affect the roadway. So at technology and apps such as Waze, that kind of thing, it doesn't have to be a crash in order to affect safety on a roadway. It could be a stalled motorist on the side of the road, or someone pulls over to catch a dog running in traffic. All of those things can start the chain of safety when it comes to traffic incident management. So caring for the public and responders starts before a crash. Post-crash care actually starts with the notification of a crash. So post-crash care is one of the components of traffic incident management and the National Roadway Safety Strategy Plan. But you can, in the 911 center, have an effect on post-crash care, both of the people involved in the crashes and also caring for your responders and making sure that they're safe throughout that crash incident. Awareness of your field response helps anticipate needs. So one of the 911 professionals' greatest strengths is the ability to anticipate what a field responder needs and get that thing out there or going even before they ask sometimes. It's a gift that 911 professionals have. So when 911 professionals are trained in traffic incident management, it helps you anticipate those needs, and you can start thinking about, okay, this person or this crash is going to take a tow or maybe two tows. Maybe there's some complicating factors. We had a livestock hauler roll over one year on the interstate, and we ended up with, I think, 85 head of cattle wandering around on the interstate. So that's definitely a complicating factor, and thinking about, okay, now we need fencing, and we need corralling, and we need veterinary care on scene to take care of some of those animals. All of those things, if you're aware of traffic incident management principles, can help you in anticipating those field responder needs, because the goal of traffic incident management is quick clearance and getting people off the roadways so that we can reduce the likelihood of secondary crashes and keep both the motoring public and our responders safe. The key part in traffic incident management for 911 professionals is the direction and the questions that you ask to callers that starts the chain of care. So let's go to the next slide, please. So there's 3 national TIM principles, and the first one is responder safety. So the first place that 911 professionals can have an impact in traffic incident management is asking the right questions promptly. Now, we have a wide variety of protocol use in this country. We've got some people using IAD protocols or APCO protocols or PowerPhone protocols, or in some cases statewide protocols or homegrown protocols. In some places we have no protocols at all. But when you are trained in traffic incident management, it helps you ask those right questions promptly. Where is the crash? What roads are affected? Are both or all lanes affected? Are you out of traffic? All of those questions can help the first responders in their response and set up, as the responders are going out to the crash, they can be thinking about, okay, it's on the, it's on the west side of the interchange, or it's on the east side of the interchange, because they're thinking about applying their traffic incident management principles and where are they going to park their apparatus? Do they need to shut down the road? What applications can we, or what interventions can we apply here to accomplish the goals of quick clearance? And those questions that you ask in the 911 center help paint an accurate picture of the scene. So we've got 2 different crash scenes here, but the questions that you ask, how many vehicles are involved? Are there any injuries? That helps the first responders set up their scene for safety. This is also a place to incorporate new technologies. I mentioned Waze earlier. There's other traffic apps that help provide information. Your PSAP might be involved in pushing out information to traffic apps and other things that help the motoring public either avoid the area, maybe take a different route. or at least apply the slow down and move over laws that hopefully are in your state. So next slide, please. The next national TIM principles are safe and quick clearance. And this is one place that 911 professionals have a real opportunity to make a difference. In Colorado, and I know in several other states as well, we have a move your crash law. And this states that under certain circumstances, if your crash meets those criteria, they want you to move the crash off the road in the first place so that responders aren't even going out into live traffic. So if your state has that law in place, some questioning by the 911 professionals can help make quick clearance a reality before responders even get on scene. So this is a card that we developed for Colorado as part of that standing task force on responder safety. And this just helps 911 professionals ask, and it's designed to go in with whatever protocol you're using. Are there any injuries and are drugs or alcohol involved? So if the answer to both of those questions is no, then you as a 911 professional should tell the caller to move their crash off the roadway and find out where it got moved to. That saves responders from ever going out into live traffic at all. And safe quick clearance from the roadway helps prevent secondary crashers, and it saves responders' lives and also the motoring public lives. They're not out on the road, hopefully not a target for a secondary crash. This also, safe and quick clearance can be affected in the 911 center by responding quickly to tow requests and other resources. So the more prepared you are to respond to those tow requests, to respond to those, I need this out there, I need that resource out there, the more that you contribute to safe and quick clearance. And we'll go to the next slide, please. The third national TIM principles is prompt, reliable, interoperable communications. And this is another place where 911 professionals really shine. You is in charge of the radio and the frequencies or the talk groups that are being used. 911 professionals being in charge of on-scene communications and facilitating communications with other partners. I know most places in Colorado, if it's on an interstate, they're going to interface with the Colorado State Patrol. You have your own interoperability with your own neighboring agencies in your state and in your jurisdiction, but facilitating those communications with other partners helps facilitate prompt, reliable, interoperable communications. CAD to CAD is another way that that might happen, and communicating with the public. Again, we're talking about variable message signs, emergency notification systems. So if you have like Everbridge or Code Red, and you're sending out information to the public about, well, there's a crash here, avoid the area, and other map apps. So really, traffic incident management starts in the PSAP, and it starts with the 911 professional. Next slide, please. So we have some resources for you. Obviously, you're like, well, where can I get training for this? And there are national resources to train 911 professionals in traffic incident management. There are online options, and this website at the Federal Highway Administration website has training options for both online, because I know it's hard for 911 professionals to get out to training sometimes, but that's an online option that you have. There's also instructor-led options, both online and in person. If you have the opportunity to go to an in-person traffic incident management class, I highly recommend it. It's a 4-hour class. It's experiential, so they usually set up a tabletop and they have matchbox cars and trucks and a little roadway, and they teach you all about apparatus placement and what the field responders are thinking when they show up to a scene and how they apply traffic incident management. And again, you don't get to play in traffic, but knowing what they're thinking about as they set up on their crash scenes can really help you keep them safe at the very beginning of an incident, when the 911 call comes in or when the PSAP gets notified of a crash. If you want to read more about the National Roadway Safety Strategy, the website is there. And I highly encourage you to check that out. Next slide, please. And finally, you have some action items. So I highly encourage you, no matter what level you are in your comm center, to find out if you have a local traffic incident management team. Traffic incident management is nationwide, and chances are there is a traffic incident management team in your area, either headed up by maybe the state patrol in your area, or a different traffic entity or law enforcement entity that you have, or maybe your emergency manager is in charge of your local TIM team. But if you have one, I highly encourage you to ensure that your comm center is represented in those TIM team meetings. Collaboration with field responders and emergency managers can help apply those TIM principles. They also do things like after action reports and collaboration on upcoming incidents as well. I also encourage you to, if you are a leader in your PSAP, I encourage you to train your PSAP personnel in traffic incident management. As I pointed out, there are free options, but I highly recommend providing this valuable training to your 911 professionals. And if you are line level, then I encourage you to ask your leadership about traffic incident management training, because quick clearance really does start in the PSAP, and you have a fantastic opportunity to help ensure the safety of your first responders through traffic incident management. And finally, I encourage you to align your call taking protocols with traffic incident management practices. As I showed earlier, there are a couple of very simple questions that you can ask to help ensure your safety of your responders once they get on scene. So whatever protocol you're using, or if you have homegrown protocols, I just encourage you to align your call taking protocols with those TIM practices so that you can be practicing quick clearance and reliable communications right at the start of your crash incidents. Next slide, please. And that's what I have on traffic incident management, and I am looking forward to your questions. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jennifer. Great presentation there. We do have a variety of questions for you. I'm going to start with the first one. And I think you sort of covered it with the action items, but do you have a list of dispatch best practices for TIM?
Yes, there are some involved with the TIM training itself, but we could definitely put together a list of best practices. Again, a lot of times webinars like this or kind of adjacent training are the first time that comm centers are hearing about traffic incident management. So we could definitely put together a list of best practices for PSAPs, for TIMs.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think we can share that on 911.gov. We obviously, the National 911 program's home is NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. So we have a great interest in improving 911's impact on traffic safety. So our next question is, in Arizona, we have state highway patrol personnel working from within the State Department of Transportation Operations Center. They monitor cameras and relay information between state DPS and DOT personnel and enhance public information sharing. Is this done in Colorado as well, and has it been successful?
We do have, obviously in Colorado, it's CDOT, and CDOT has a camera network that is monitored. CDOT in Colorado is actually working on becoming a hub for CAD to CAD operations. So I think that they have big plans for becoming that information hub and getting information out. In the absence of CAD to CAD right now, they do have a network of information sharing through text messaging and through app management. So I think any information that you can get out there as far as traffic management and what's going on in the roadways is helpful. And I'm glad to hear that Arizona has such a robust system.
Yeah, that's great. Our next question is, do 911 professionals instruct layperson callers on measures to ensure they're not at risk of being struck by and generating a secondary crash?
That's a great question. And I think that it depends on your protocols. If you are using a national protocol system such as IAED or APCO, I haven't looked at power phones lately, but I know that they have instructions for care for callers to keep themselves safe on the roadways. In the absence of structured protocols, I think that's definitely something that PSAPs can and should build into their protocols, obviously under direction for your lawyers to look over. But you want to, like, basic directions such as, if you can't move your crash, stay in your vehicle with your seatbelt on. is a measure of care to keep the public safe that are involved in a crash, or if they can't get back in their vehicle, or if it's not safe to do so, getting off the roadway and into the median or off to the side of the road and behind a guardrail. Those are all things that you can instruct your callers to take measures to protect their safety, to keep them out of traffic. Obviously moving their crash, if you have such a law, or if they can, out of the roadway to an off-ramp or a parking lot, that's going to keep them the most safe, because then they're out of the traffic in the first place.
No, that's great. Thanks. We have a question about whether the recordings be available for distribution. Yes, we will post recordings and slides on 911.gov. That usually takes a couple weeks for us to get that done. And then so far, I think your last question is, Jennifer, it says, I serve on the Arizona TIM Coalition and we're involved in EDC 7 Technologies Initiative. One initiative is the use of drones in TIM scenes. The question is, what role will 911 professionals have in use interactions with a launched drone at a highway crash incident?
Man, that's a great question, and definitely falls under future technologies. I think that's going to be different for each jurisdiction and PSAP. I know that there's an agency in California that is really standing up their drone program, and some of those drones get launched from the PSAP. There's a lot of FAA regulations surrounding drones and how far they can fly and whether or not they have to be within sight of the operator. But I think that drone usage on crash scenes is a fantastic way to use technologies to keep responders safe. The other technology that we didn't really talk about, but is definitely out there, is video to 911. So if your agency takes video to 911, having that video available, even if the 911 professional doesn't look at it, but being pushed out to the field responders, that can help tell that story and paint that picture of the crash scene before they even get there, so that they can set up their apparatus or design their crash scene response in such a way that is safe. Drone pictures could do it. Highway cameras can help with that. Video to 911 can help with that. I think that the next 5 years in terms of drone development and usage and video to 911 usage are going to see some great advancements in terms of traffic incident management and how we keep our public and our responders safe.
Yeah, I would agree. That's great. Well, thank you, Jennifer. That's all the questions we have for you today. A very informative session. So thanks again to all of our speakers today. And this will conclude our webinar. We appreciate everyone's participation. And as mentioned, an archived version of today's webinar will be available on 911.gov soon. The next webinar we have scheduled for Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. We will be posting the webinar's topic and speakers soon. We hope you all will be able to join us. Thank you and have a great day.